We are so pleased to have all of you here today. I'm Catherine Schneider, Vice President of the Fitchburg Historical Society. We're missing our president today. Alan Tariba is going to be having cataract surgery on Tuesday, so he's taking care of himself at home these days, so we wish him well. We have not been here in our home, here in the Fitchburg Library, for 3 years for a program due to COVID, of course. We had several Zoom programs offered, which we were so happy to do and excited about using that new technology. But now that we're in a different phase with our lives and with COVID, we're able to meet again here. Promega was kind enough to have us over for a spring program last April, I think it was. So we were happy to have them host us. But we're back home again. And just to let you know, we do have our office here in the Fitchburg Public Library. So we're housed here on the second floor in the Fitchburg room. So if you go into the Fitchburg room, you'll also see our large mural, which has depicts Fitchburg in about 1900. So it's a fun mural to look back in time and see that. And then downstairs we have in the basement a little bit of storage space too for some of our larger items. So we're just so happy to be here at the library and to welcome you all here again today. So we also have in the back our treasurer, Roger Tesh, and he would be delighted if any of you would like to join the Fitchburg Historical Society. He has membership possibilities back there for you to engage in. And then Mike, also from Mike Croft from our board, is back there to take attendance. So if you haven't had a chance to sign in, he has a sign-in sheet back there too. So just be sure to put your name down there if you would, please. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Sean Pfaff, who will be introducing our special speaker for today. Sean?
Thank you. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. I think as Historic Society, we should talk about the historical Packer loss today, but besides that, exactly. Glad you are here. I am Sean Pfaff, member of the Fitchburg Historical Society. Very excited about today's program. I had recommended this to the group, and I appreciate Catherine and others for their interest in this. I think there's a lot happening in Fitchburg. Before we get into our program, I introduce one of our alders, Randy Udall is here. Randy, thank you for being here. Randy represents the 4th District, which is Seminole Forest, where I live, Lacey Heights, but a lot of the rural area. And so Randy has a real deep understanding of the rural area as well. But I'm very excited about the program because I think this is the perfect time. 3 weeks from today, or tomorrow, Chad and his team get ready to inherit the Town of Madison. So what a big deal that is. So I've got to know Chad Brecklin for quite some time. Chad was the deputy chief when I was your mayor. Honored to serve that role for 4 years. Chad and I became good friends. We were fellow Brewers fans who lived and died Brewer baseball. But we also went through a lot of things together. If you remember that awful murder that happened on the north side, 2 women were killed on, what road was that, Chad? I can't remember.
Raceway one?
On Yarmouth Greenway.
Oh,
the gentleman in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
So Chad and I spent a lot of time together. I just knew his future was going to be bright. So I'm going to introduce Chad Brecklin. He's had a great history with the city of Fitchburg, but I want to make sure you guys know exactly his history. Chad is the current city administrator, a role he has held since July of 2021. Chad previously served the Fitchburg Police Department as its chief of police, lieutenant sergeant, and police officer. He began his career in Fitchburg in 1999. He's been around a long time. Prior to joining Fitchburg Police Department, Chad worked as a police officer in Oregon, Wisconsin. Chad holds a master's degree in business administration from Concordia University. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Remember that was when I was with Mayor Chad, and we took 2 weeks and went out and studied that program. He's going to give us great insight today on what you see as Fitchburg, as we know, is an incredibly growing city. And I'm very excited to give Chad Brecklin. Let's give him a warm welcome today.
Thank you for the kind words, Sean. So again, thanks, Sean, for those kind words. I certainly hope I don't disappoint. Sean's given me quite the billing here this afternoon. So, I don't know if this is a good time to work this in, but before I get into the program, I wanted to thank, I believe Sean probably had a hand in picking the time for this presentation today so that it did not conflict with a certain NFL team's game. Now, not necessarily the game that you guys are maybe thinking of. I have, a couple of vices, but one of them is I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, and they play at 3:30 this afternoon, so I will be able to see that. So I had to work that in, but I figured there might be a little bit of salt from the loss this morning, though. That was a tough one to listen to on the radio, so I was listening to that this morning before coming in. But anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you all today. I want to talk about a few things that are happening at City Hall, and I can really say a few at this point. We could talk for several days if we were going to cover everything that was possibly going on at City Hall. But some of the main things I want to cover today are our budget. Well, I'll give you a brief overview of the city and kind of its operations first. We'll talk a little bit about budget, talk a bit about the Town of Madison attachment that Sean mentioned is going to happen here in about 3 weeks. And then we can talk about some of the development that's been happening throughout the city. There's all kinds of it. All you have to do is drive around and see all the dirt being moved around and those sorts of things. But more importantly, I want to leave some time to have just an informal question and answer session where, whatever questions you guys may have about what's happening at City Hall, in your neighborhood, throughout the community, we have that opportunity for that conversation back and forth. And then after the conclusion of the program, I'll be happy to hang out if anybody wants to chat individually, one-on-one. So I was told that we'd like to wrap up in roughly around 2:30, so I'll try to keep things moving. I probably have way more slides than I need, so if I breeze through some of them, please bear with me.
Chad, you want
Yeah.
questions at the end?
Yeah, that's fine. If something comes up, it's pretty informal that, if you just have something that's relative to one of the slides, by all means raise your hand and we can go ahead and go with that question. So if you guys want to get a hold of me at all, those are my contact information. My phone number is listed, and then email. Generally speaking, email tends to be the best, largely because I spend most of my days in meetings and not sitting by a telephone. Aaron Richardson, as you know, is our current mayor. He has been mayor now, I think this is his 4th year, if I recall correctly. And before that, he was on our city council for a number of years. Here is a photo and a listing of our current common council. As Sean mentioned, one of our council members, Council President Randy Udell, is in the room here with us. And here's a little bit about Fitchburg. And one of the things that we are really happy and proud about in Fitchburg is the diversity that we have in our community. If you see this chart here, when we talk diversity, we can talk of lots of different types of diversity in Fitchburg. But when we look at racial and cultural diversity, we are one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse community in all of the state of Wisconsin. When you look at approximately 63% of our population being white, approximately 10% being black, and then we have over 15% of our community identifies as Hispanic. And when we also talk diversity, we also have quite a diversity in our neighborhoods, as you all know. As a former township, we have 36 square miles that goes from largely urban in our northern area to more suburban in our central area to rural in our southern area. And then, of course, when we take a look at all of the other different things we have going on in the city, we have over 800 businesses in the city of Fitchburg currently, a labor force of over 18,000, and an unemployment rate of about 1.7% in Fitchburg. Growing population, we're about 32,000, depending on which estimate you look at currently. When the Town of Madison actually attaches in 3 weeks, our official census population, which is, it's dated now, it's a 2020 census population, will put us at 30,999. That 32,000 is likely Department of Administration state population estimate. We have over $4 billion in equalized value. Last year's budget was approved at over $41 million. That's both our operating budget, which is your day-to-day operations for all that's happening at City Hall, the fire stations, our highway maintenance facility down the road, police department, the library here, and then also our capital budget, which includes things like road projects, large equipment purchases, and those sorts of things. We are very proud of our AA1 bond rating. That is one tish below the highest bond rating you can possibly get. So Fitchburg has definitely taken its financial responsibilities very seriously over the years, and that's something that we're very proud of, is to have such a high bond rating. Our median income is about $76,000 a year. Average home valuation as of 1/1 of 2021 was $330,000, and then our Chamber and Visitors Bureau has over 400 members. So when you look at City Hall as a whole and city staffing, we have just over 190 full-time equivalent employees in the city. So that's quite a few. I know when I started with the city about 23 years ago, we had about 34 employees in the police department, and now there are over 65 employees in the police department. So that's just one example of how much the city has grown in the last 20 plus years. We have for our EMS service right here, we do a joint venture with the city of Fitchburg, the city of Verona, and the town of Verona, and that's a long-standing EMS district, the Fitch-Verona EMS district, that we share with the 3 municipalities. And we have some internal staff work groups that members of our work group or our staff can participate in. We have a diversity, equity, and inclusion resource group, a community response team, which is made up of multiple different departments that meet monthly to talk about any sorts of issues that may be of concern within our community, and then we jointly problem solve those issues and determine what, if any, steps each particular department can take to help address those. We have an internal safety team that meets regularly to look at our work practices to make sure that we're preventing injuries where we can possibly do so, and obviously having a safe work environment. We also have a development team, which we'll get into a little bit later here in the city or in this presentation and talk about it in more detail. And then finally, we have a police and fire wellness team. That's a group of police and firefighters who are trained in critical incident management so that they can then, after our teams have gone to critical incidents, they can sit down and help debrief those folks and help kind of begin the process of healing after we've been through some stressful situations. One of the things that was done about this time last year in response to the 2020 census, and it is done every 10 years after the census, is we do a redistricting. We take a look at where our population growth has been, and we redistrict the city so that we have nearly equal or as reasonably equal representation as far as population distribution amongst the 4 aldermanic districts. So there were some changes. Some of District 2 was added up into this section of town. We had a little bit of adjustment here in the center of town as well, and then over here in the northeast section of town there was a bit of movement as well. We adjusted all of our polling locations as a result of that. You have all voted in your new polling locations, any election that you've gone to the polls in so far this year. And then we are adding a 5th polling location beginning in next month, November, as a result of the Town of Madison attachment. There'll be a 5th polling location that's added in the Southdale neighborhood. So I'll transition here to the 2023 budget. Mayor Richardson just released his proposed budget on the 23rd of September, and that budget has a number of new initiatives and personnel within it, and there is an opportunity for folks, and I encourage you to go out to the city's website to read the mayor's letter that's included in there. It kind of gives his thought process behind what he prioritized in his budget, as well as a summary of what he's added in the budget. You have the opportunity to share your feedback with your alders if you're so inclined to do so. And then there are also public hearings coming up on October 11th, which is at the council meeting on Tuesday night at 7:30. There'll be another one again on November 1st at 7:30. And the city council alders will be putting their amendments in. Those are all due to our finance director at the close of business on Friday. So that's an opportunity for them to potentially change the priorities in which the mayor has identified and or implement some of the priorities that they would like to see in next year's budget. And then the city council looks to do final adoption of that budget on November 1st. some of the highlights in the mayor's budget, and this is all within his letter, but I'll save you some time perhaps in sharing the summary here, is a commitment to taxpayers. As his proposed budget has been developed to this point, the city portion, and we all know that there are 4 taxing entities in your property tax bill: the city of Fitchburg, the county of Dane, whatever particular school district you reside in, and then the technical college district. But as it stands right now, the city portion of property tax on an average residential home is estimated to be approximately the same with this upcoming 2023 budget as it was with the 2022 budget. I know that the mayor was really critical of making sure that we had a reasonable budget that reflects the taxpayers. We have a commitment to employees that the mayor has identified. We're implementing a market survey result, which basically is a market survey in which we hired a consultant to take a look at what the salary market and wage market is for a variety of different positions throughout the city. As you can imagine, we hadn't done one for about 7 years, and we had gotten a little bit low below the market. So we are making some adjustments to be more competitive with our recruitment and our retention efforts. And we are also providing an increase for employees through a pay increase through that initiative. We're increasing our hourly rate for all of our part-time and limited term employees to at least $15 an hour. We feel that that's an important thing to do for all of our part-time employees as well. And then we also are adding an hourly rate increase for any of our city employees who have a bilingual certification in either Spanish, Hmong, or American Sign Language. A lot of times, particularly in our public safety departments, there's a high need for Spanish-speaking police officers or firefighters. And then even we have a pretty significant need at our clerk's counter for bilingual skills. So we're going to add an hourly rate increase in next year's budget, assuming it's passed, to allow those folks who have that certification to be paid a little bit higher rate in order to compensate them for their additional work. The mayor also has a heavy commitment to road maintenance. He's proposed an increase in funding for both resurfacing and road maintenance in this budget. And one thing that Mayor Richardson has prioritized during his entire time as mayor has been to slowly and gradually build up that annual budget that we have for roads. He recognizes that that's one of the things that we all use nearly every day throughout the city, and that we need to make sure that folks can get where they need to get and can do so without having to ride through potholes and crumbling pavement. And then the other thing that he also looks to incorporate into his budget is a commitment to the Expenditure Restraint program. That is a state-level program that provides aid to qualifying municipalities that limit growth in their spending. So if we meet that threshold, the state will give us an additional $650,000 in aid if we limit our spending to certain thresholds. So the mayor has done that in order to, again, help capture more state aid coming into the city, and then also that $650,000 that does not have to be levied through property taxes through the city at least. City staffing is also one of the large focuses of the mayor's proposed budget. And you can see that a lot of staff positions have been proposed in the 2023 budget and were also added in the 2022 budget that we're currently in. That is all due to the growth of Fitchburg as it exists today, and also in anticipation for the Town of Madison attachment that's going to be happening again in 3 weeks. So for the proposed budget, you can see the listing here of the positions. And I won't read all of those, but you can kind of take a look at those, and then you can take a look at what was added in last year's budget, or really this year's budget. It seems like we're talking in the past, even though we still have a full quarter left in this year, but we kind of always, with budget season, we're looking already to 2023. You can see in this listing here that clearly the mayor has had a commitment to public safety. A number of positions have been added in both the police and fire departments in the last 2 years. But he also has had a commitment to trying to benefit as many departments as possible through additional staffing additions. If there's one thing that I've noticed, particularly in my time in the city administrator role, is that most, if not all, of our city departments are running over capacity. They just don't have enough staff to keep up with the workload that continuously comes in And when you look at how much the city has grown in the last 10, 15, 20 years, the staff additions have not kept up with that. We've been fortunate in the last 2 years in order to add these positions. The way we've done that is through closure of tax increment districts, or TIDs. The TID 6, which was over at the Orchard Point, the Target area, Highway PD and McKee Road, we closed that in this year's budget. That allows us to adjust our levy limits, which then allows us to add some additional staff through that process. And then this coming 2023, we're going to close TID 4, which is largely a lot of the technology campus down on Noble Drive, and then down through the Promega campus on East Sherrill, and then off towards Highway 14. I think, Sean, you'll be well versed with another project that came out of that TID. That was the interchange at Highway 14 and Lacey Road when you were mayor. So some of the budget challenges that we do have, you might be looking at this and saying, well, look at all the positions you've added. You can't possibly have any budget challenges. Well, I can tell you we do. Few things that are happening here is we actually had told department heads that they couldn't put in for more than 2 positions in the 2023 budget. That was it. And we knew we wouldn't even be able to fund 2 positions from every department. But everybody was kind enough to at least limit their requests. And I know that in particular our public safety departments could add probably upwards of half a dozen to eight people in each department if staffing and levy limits were allowing it. So some of the things that do work against us are levy limits. That's the state law that allows us to only increase our levy by what our net new construction is. So we are fortunate that as I mentioned, when you drive around this community, you see a lot of new construction. We had 4.1% new construction last year, and that allows us to add positions, and then you package that with the TID closures. That's how we get to these larger numbers of people. We also recognize that construction isn't likely to happen every single year. We've been really fortunate over the last probably 10 years since we came out of the last recession to have this nice net new construction. We are one of the highest net new construction percentages of communities throughout the state. So we are very fortunate there. But our shared revenue, which is another aid program from the state, has not really had significant changes to it, and probably at least, I see Rich agreeing through this, has not really had any changes to it probably in the last 2 decades plus. And our aid has stayed relatively flat. They haven't adjusted it for any sorts of cost of living adjustments, inflation, or anything. And between a lack of an increase in shared revenue and those levy limits that I've talked about, it presents some very challenging budgetary situations for municipalities and school districts for that matter, because they're in the same boat. So what you see is a referendum happening. And school districts have been big, obviously, with the referendums in the last 5-10 years. And now you're starting to see more municipalities do referendums. City of Middleton has one on the ballot for operating expenses, to add some staff, to provide wage increases for their employees. I think the Village of Shorewood Hills has one as well coming up in the November election. So you're starting to see this now, these levy limits and this lack of an increase in shared revenue have a significant impact on municipalities' ability to provide for their operating budgets. It is possible that a future council in the next couple of years or next few years is going to have to really think very hard about whether or not Fitchburg is going to need to do a referendum. So stay tuned. So the Town of Madison, one of the things in the Town of Madison that I want to share is that agreement was signed by the City of Madison, the City of Fitchburg, and the Town of Madison back in 2002. And I was a sergeant in the police department at that time, and there's a handful of us that are still with the city when this thing was signed, and I think all of us kind of look at each other and are like, never thought we'd see this happen, right? Who knew we'd still be here with the city? Let alone I never thought I'd be in this position trying to trying to manage all of this stuff. But it's been a 20-year journey to the point that's going to culminate here in 3 weeks, in which the town of Madison and these orange shaded areas here.
Yeah, can you just tell us what
Yeah.
the belt line is here?
Yep, absolutely. So here's the belt line running right here. And then, so this is Rimrock Road right here, belt line, and Highway 14. So this is the Southdale neighborhood in the town of Madison that's going to attach to the city of Fitchburg. There's about 1,400 residents here and 100 businesses. Some of the things that are there, you'll know Exact Sciences has a facility there, Quartz Health has a facility there, Delta Beer Lab, if anybody is into that. Zimbrick has some stuff here. And then the other part is the Zimbrick dealerships here on Fish Hatchery Road are going to come into the city of Fitchburg, right south of the Beltline. All the stuff in blue is headed to the city of Madison. And we started with an internal work group here about 1.5 years ago, consisting of a number of department heads who are going to kind of help us shepherd this whole thing in. And we put together a software application to kind of break down all of the tasks and items that departments needed to address in advance of the town attachment. And that list across all of our departments got close to 250 different tasks, issues, and things across the board, whether it's assessing, whether it's finance, whether it's planning and zoning, whether it's public safety. It's touching every aspect of our operations. And one thing that we've learned through all of this is that this is probably the first occurrence where anyone can figure that 2 municipalities were attaching a township. It's happened in the past where 1 has attached a township, but not 2. So it's definitely required some very close collaboration with the city of Madison on this entire process. And we've really been able to check a lot of those 200 or nearly 250 tasks off the list so far, and have kind of a handful of large ones remaining. But I think we're ready, to be honest with you, and I think it's going to be one of those things that we'll be sitting around that week of November 1st and saying, okay, here's one that came in that we couldn't think of, right? Between the cities of Madison and the cities of Fitchburg, all the great people working on this. So we're kind of sitting in this little bit of a lull period now, wrapped up our stuff, ready to go, and then we're going to wait and see, what needs to be addressed yet. So, but staff has done a great job with this particular initiative. We did a lot of outreach with the town of Madison throughout the summer months, and again, I think it's gone a long way. I'll breeze through this one pretty quick. I talked about a TID closure. One of the things that the TID closure does allow us to do is it also provides excess increment that the municipality, the taxing jurisdictions receive. And in this case, Fitchburg received about a $2 million excess tax increment that we were able to utilize for one-time expenses. We paired that with our ARPA money that you probably heard about coming from the federal government. And that totaled approximately $5 million that the city council was able to utilize for one-time projects. I will say that there's maybe been a bit of an prioritization in that. The council identified about $7 million worth of expenditures that they would like to use that on. So staff continues to work with the council as things pop up to make sure that we stay within what's been allowed. But you're going to see things like stormwater projects that maybe haven't been able to get done because of a lack of funding that we'll be able to do with this. Some additional road resurfacing projects that we can take a look and do. Probably going to use this money to help redo tennis courts down at McKee Farms Park. Those sorts of investments in a variety of areas of our community. So.
You can't give that money back to taxpayers, kid.
No. So a couple of things that have been happening elsewhere in City Hall. You may have seen some of these signs popping up throughout the community that kind of allow you, point you where you might want to go if you're looking for parks, city park amenities, City Hall, a fire station, one of the schools. And we've also done a website refresh that just rolled out here at the end of August. So if you've had a chance to check that out, there's a lot of useful information out there. We have a Healthy Neighborhoods initiative that we do every year in the city. There are now soon to be 4 healthy neighborhoods once we add the Southdale neighborhood in from the town of Madison. And then those neighborhoods are North Fish Hatchery Road, our Belmar Duns Marsh neighborhood near Allied Drive, and then our Jamestown neighborhood off to the west of Verona Road. And the city does provide a grant program through its budgetary process where nonprofits are able to apply for some grant funding that they can then deploy in those particular neighborhoods. Some road projects. As you all know, we've just finally finished up Fish Hatchery Road at the end of last year, about this time last year. That was a 2-year project that, was a bit of an inconvenience, to say the least, if you traveled Fish Hatchery Road or if you had a business there. But ultimately, the project turned out really well. It was not a cheap project, as you can see, at about $28 million to resurface that roadway from the Beltline down to Highway PD McKee Road. And it is good to have that done. A couple upcoming projects. Lacey Road is going to be reconstructed from Seminole Highway to the west over to Fitchburg Road in next year's construction season. There'll be a roundabout going in at Seminole Highway and Lacey Road, and then a resurfacing and reconstruction all the way from that intersection to Fitchburg Road. We'll talk about some of the development that's happening out there. We also have South Saline Road, which has been a bit of a multi-year project, more than a bit, it is a multi-year project. You're seeing some work going on right now between Lacey Road and East Sherrill Parkway. Last year we did from Lacey Road south to Irish Lane, and then in 2024 you're going to see us do from East Sherrill Parkway all the way north to McKoy Road, and put in a new intersection at McCoy Road, move that into a T intersection that will better enhance safety instead of that curve and kind of that little goofy intersection there. So multi-year project, but definitely we'll get a more urban feel for that road, and that'll be set for the next generation here, where with a lot of growth there over in that part of town. So I mentioned we have the development team, and what we've done since I became city administrator is we've implemented a weekly meeting where all of our departments who are involved in a development process, be planning and zoning, public works, fire department, building inspection department, assessing, finance, legal, economic development, of course. We all sit down every Tuesday afternoon, make ourselves available for anyone who wants to do a project in the city of Fitchburg, and then they can ask us any questions that they have about their proposed project and try to cut down on the time it might take for them to seek feedback from city employees and allow them to bring their project to Plan Commission or wherever much more quickly. And then it also affords an opportunity for all of us just to be in the same room every single week. So if there are other issues that we have to address, maybe there's a zoning issue with a particular business or whatever the case may be, we can all sit down and talk about that and develop strategies to address that particular situation. So you can see the list there. I think I covered pretty much all of them there. It's helpful to have this group, as you were about to see as we start looking at development and construction information. This group can be pretty busy throughout the day or throughout each week. So when you look at our building construction permit value, right here is where we have tended to trend over the years. We've had obviously a lot of really good years, the last 4 in particular, with well over $100 million beginning in 18. And 2019 obviously was a bit of an anomaly. There were a couple of very large pro-mega projects within 2019's amount there. They had the $150 million project over off of Commerce Park on our west side of town, and about another $170 million project off down to by City Hall and across the way down here on their campus. We are trending. I just checked with the building inspector before this week in advance of this presentation, and he's feeling pretty comfortable that we'll probably be in this general vicinity again this year. So we've had over 100 single-family building permits already issued for this year, about 450 multifamily units. I think was roughly 20 duplex townhome units as well in that mix so far. And he anticipates that despite perhaps a bit of a slow in the last quarter here due to some economic factors, that we're still going to end the year pretty good.
Those are some rough days in 2011, boy.
Yeah.
Remember them well.
Yeah, when you look at that. I would not want to be city administrator trying to develop a budget off of a $25 million net new construction.
You did it, though. That was my first year.
Yeah.
It was dark, man.
I bet.
didn't know when the recession was going to end.
Yeah, I don't envy you on that one, Sean. Thank you for leading through that time.
It's okay, though.
So when we look at our growth, we use a comprehensive land use plan that's updated periodically. I think we're slated to do a full update here about 2024, and that identifies where we want to grow in the city of Fitchburg. Where we are planning on growing, I don't know if I've got this upcoming on the next slide or not. In case I don't, I'll cover it right now. Actually, this one shows a little bit better. Is South Stoner Prairie. We're about to embark on a neighborhood study here. I think there's about 275 acres that we'll begin studying for plans for neighborhood for development. And then our Greenfield neighborhood right here, which is about 700 acres, is the next area where we're also looking to do a neighborhood study. And those studies will begin later this year. And of course, as with any study, we'll have an opportunity for public and community input. So this is Mike Zimmerman, our economic development coordinator. His favorite slide, I think, when he talks about building places and spaces. And when we talk from a growth and development standpoint, we have our technology neighborhood. We're right here in the Fitchburg Center, Civic Campus, Technology Campus, our Uptown area, which we've talked about a bit already, Novation, which is now the part of the Town of Madison that's coming in, of course, North Fish Hatchery Road, and then West Fitchburg, McKee, Verona, Jamestown, Allied, Duns Marsh. Those are kind of the areas where you can see where we're focusing our growth on. And then you can see this line here is our urban service area, which is where municipal water and sewer exists. So you can kind of see where those clusters are all in there. Fitchburg Technology Neighborhood, and I'll breeze through these slides quite a bit here because I'll try to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes so that there's plenty of time for question and answers. You can see that where we are in the Fitchburg Technology Neighborhood, some of the businesses that are in here. We have Thermo Fisher, CDW, Playcon, the Hartung, Promegas, Sub-Zeros of the world. There's a lot of folks who are doing a lot of good things here, some significant employers. These are some projects that are happening down in Promega's campus. The most recent one is their USONA project, which you can see right on top of the hill down here, where they're going to start doing some research on the effects of psychedelic drugs and depression. There's a photo of that. Our other businesses going in right now, one of the things we have going on this lot here, which you can see down below, and I think I've got a slide with it right here, is the Encompass Health. That just broke ground a couple of weeks ago. They're doing now, it was originally planned as a 40-bed rehabilitation hospital. They've already come back to the city and asked to do 56 beds. So they're already upping their plans from what had originally been proposed. So that, again, is just down the hill here on Fish Hatchery Road. One NAC Data Center has done an expansion in there. Promega has a project right here. So the hospital that I just talked about right there, the rehab hospital at Fish Hatchery and Noble, and then Promega has purchased this building here, and they're doing this is the original building when they purchased it and built it, and they're doing a building that basically more than doubles the size of that particular property down there. Uptown, which is near Highway 14 right here, and then Lacey Road comes through here. That's the intersection or the interchange that we had talked about earlier, that when Sean was mayor, that the city went ahead and made that significant investment to improve access into Fitchburg off of Highway 14 and to really open this up for development. This is a smart code neighborhood within the city of Fitchburg, which has different design standards than what you might see in most other places in Fitchburg. The goal of this smart code neighborhood is to have a level of higher density in that the buildings are then also have a more urban feel to them, where they're built closer to the road, trying to create those sorts of dense urban feelings within this particular area. You can see, well, we'll get to it from the residential side, some of the photos from the Terra Vesta neighborhood, which is a residential neighborhood also in the SMART code. But you can see what's been happening over there. Phoenix has built their headquarters right here in Uptown. They have been recently acquired by the medical technology company Shine, which is based in Janesville and is becoming a rapidly growing global company. So we're definitely happy to have them there. We have the Limerick Townhomes and Apartments, which is 55 plus. That has just opened in that neighborhood. And then a number of different apartment buildings have gone up. And then here's some single-family homes that have also gone in that neighborhood. Our newest Quick Trip opened last week. We're actually very happy about that over at Cyene and East Sherrill. It's a 9,000 square foot Quick Trip, so it's actually bigger than what you would see at their stores over at McKee in Verona. It has a lot of a really nice area for if you're after coffee or if you're after a quick carry-out meal or even fresh fruit. I saw plenty of bananas and apples and all kinds of things in the store when we were over there last week for their opening. Yeah.
I'm just curious why you approved a gas station only one door away from another gas station.
Yeah, so that was a really good opportunity because it allowed us to redevelop that site. So there hadn't been any uses come forward from for that particular site until the Quick Trip came along. And I don't know if you recall, that was a really old warehouse. There was some site contamination issues. So it was one of those situations where nothing had really been happening there. And when Quick Trip came along, it seemed to make a lot of sense to have a nice opportunity at redevelopment and then to also take care and cap any of those ground contamination issues that might exist. And obviously that is something that we had talked about in the city, that there is obviously a gas station there already. But one of the other things that the Quick Trip could do that the current gas station cannot do is there's not really a local grocery in that particular area. And Quick Trip, with the supply chain that they've built, does allow at least an opportunity for residents who are in that part of our community to not have to travel too far to be able to get at least, a short trip to the grocery store, a gallon of milk, again, some of that produce or other food that they may be after. But it's a fair question, absolutely. One of the other projects that's forthcoming here at the intersection of Cyene Road and Lacey Road and just south of Uptown is the Hartung property. If you've probably seen their seed processing facility over there. They are proposing through the Hartung Brothers and Sarah Investments to bring a few 100,000 feet of laboratory medical employment space, and then also about 400 residential units in that particular neighborhood. That is beginning to work its way through the city hall process, city approval process. And we also recently created a tax increment district in there in the hopes that we can potentially attract some good commercial users for that particular space. We talk about the town of Madison. There's actually a fair amount of development going on in that very small section of the town that we are getting. Rutabaga Paddle Sports has just broken ground and they've got their building under construction. We also have a climbing gym that's been proposed right to the next door of Rutabaga as well. So a few other projects moving forward there. The Fawside property, which is the intersection of Highway MM here, McCoy Road and 14. There's been a proposal submitted by a developer to put about 350 residential units with a bit of a mix of owner and rental, as well as senior, as well as about 37,000 in commercial space in that particular site. That is another opportunity for reclaiming a landfill, clean fill site that's there. So that one is currently working its way through processes within the city as well. And then, of course, we've talked about the Fish Hatchery Road Reconstruction project. We've been doing plenty of visioning for Fish Hatchery Road and what that corridor could look like over the next 10
golf
to
course
20
is
years.
state, right?
Golf courses here. Yep.
Thanks, Ann. I knew I'd
Yep.
that for you.
Yep. That is deed restricted to remain a golf course as far as I know. So But you can see a lot of development has happened in Fish Hatchery Road. The Park Bank redeveloped, brought a Starbucks with them, Terrace Point Apartments, the Highline Senior Apartment Building. There's another building going up behind the UW Credit Union, which is one of the other new projects that came in. Another mixed-use building with apartments and some commercial space. There's others that developers are having conversations with the city on, which is good. Hopefully the economy still keeps those on track, but there's been a lot of attention on Fish Hatchery Road after that reconstruction was done. That was a case of the city really putting itself on the forefront to try to encourage some redevelopment in Fish Hatchery Road corridor by going ahead and reconstructing that road to try to incentivize, if you will, the private sector to come to the table, and there has been a lot of redevelopment that's happened there.
Chad, did you also mention that the bus rapid transit will be on that corridor at Fish Hatchery as well?
Yeah, that will, as Madison Metro continues to enhance its routes. Fish Hatchery Road is currently tentatively planned to be one of the bus rapid transit routes. So it would basically stop, I think, right about here is the Caddis Bend area. So that's where the planned stop would be, and then that would be able to take folks downtown.
On that issue, is there any intent to expand public transportation into uptown and some of these new innovative locations? Not everybody has a car to get everywhere.
Yes, very good question. And yes, our council just recently added about $125,000 in funding for our transit contract that will kick in as part of the new route redesign in late 2023, which will allow, if my recollection is correct, there'll be a morning and evening rush hour route that will basically come from downtown all the way out to City Hall, and then it'll work its way through our uptown campus, our Terra Vesta neighborhood, the Southdale neighborhood in the town of Madison that's coming into Fitchburg, and then back downtown. That will run in the morning and afternoon peak times. So there has certainly been some increase there to try to provide some additional transportation options, largely for employment options. So, and that's something, that's a whole topic that we could probably spend a whole hour meeting on, is how could we potentially enhance just intra-city, intra-Fitchburg transit options. But it's been very challenging, to say the least. Here's another project that's been approved by the city. It has not yet broken ground. It's another large apartment complex or building on Traceway Drive across from the High Line. I'll keep moving here. Chapel Valley, lots 53 and 54. This is right near McKee Farms Park, where they're doing an assisted living and a memory care project. You can see the number of units that are listed. Sub-Zero has been busy. If you've driven by Seminole Highway near Sub-Zero Parkway, I just flipped that accidentally. They have just opened their new design center of over 300,000 square feet. And I don't know if anyone else has noticed, they also put up a new sign right there at the intersection that's referring to this area as their global campus, which we think is a really nice thing that we have their global campus here in the city of Fitchburg.
The idea around early 2010s of all leaving too.
Yeah, they've got, I think now, over 1 million square feet of under roof here just in Fitchburg alone. So they've definitely made a significant, right there it is, 1.5 million total square feet, and over 1,500 jobs are in Fitchburg just in Sub-Zero alone. So we've been very fortunate to have them in our community. Some of the other things in our business park, I mentioned the Promega investment. Hop House opened, the O'Brien Solar Fields. I think somebody chatted about that earlier today. And then Oak Bank Retail has another building proposed near the bank there. Our Arrowhead neighborhood, which is near, again, McKee and Verona Road. The Mackenzie Workforce Development Center, that's a project that the Boys and Girls Club is leading. They're moving their headquarters there, and then they're also partnering with John McKenzie and others through Madison Area Builders Association to actually create a trades development center where kids in high school can go to this center to learn about trades, electrical, HVAC, construction, framing, those sorts of things, with the intent to give them an opportunity to learn those skills at a younger age, perhaps get into the workforce soon after high school or college, and that it also helps address some of the labor shortages that those companies, the builders in particular, are having. A few other projects are listed there. General Beverage is doing an expansion coming up here that's been working its way through the city. Little John's is doing some renovations to the old Comfort Shop, A1 Furniture building. And then some other projects here, this resort lifestyle community, which has senior apartments, about 130 of them.
This is up by Target, right?
This is right behind Target, and we were just there for their ribbon cutting last week. Really nice facility. And then the Limestone Ridge right behind Hy-Vee is workforce housing, which those rents are based upon a certain percentage of the Dane County median income. Typically, somewhere around 60 to 80% of what those rents are based upon. And we can always use more workforce housing. Housing affordability is one of the biggest community issues we hear about. Edgewood, I don't know if many of you have heard about that, but Edgewood is bought some land from the O'Briens, about 40 acres on Lacey Road, just to the west of Seminole Highway. They are going to build the college athletic fields there. Some of the preliminary drawings that we've seen and have been submitted to the city are really nice. I think that's going to be a great facility to have there. This is Seminole Highway right here, the Badger State Trail. They're restoring this area into a wetlands, and then that their educational classes can come out and actually walk those wetlands and do some sort of educational research type things within those as well. And then you can see the rest of the facilities that'll be there. There is another subdivision proposed, and I'm doing horrible on time. My apologies. So when we transition to housing, I'm wrapping up here pretty quick. As I mentioned, we have an actual housing plan, and that came out in about 3 years ago. And our Healthy Neighborhoods, our CETA, those groups are the ones that are largely trying to look at our housing and what we can do to help provide a wide variety of housing units throughout the city. One of the things that the housing, not only this plan, but when you start looking at countywide plans, talks about is the number of housing units that we are actually deficient in, not only Fitchburg, but in Dane County. I mean, we're talking like thousands of housing units as far as being deficient throughout the county, which kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit when you look around and you see apartment buildings going up seemingly everywhere and a lot of single family houses, townhomes, and those sorts of things. But they sell right away because the demand is so high, and because we're below the supply is certainly not keeping up with the demand. Stoner Prairie subdivision near the intersection of Seminole Highway and Lacey Road is nearing completion. There won't be any lots left in the Verona School District except for about 120 lots that Payne and Dolan is working on near the intersection of Lacey Road and Fitchburg Road, which is one of the reasons why we need to begin the South Stoner Prairie neighborhood plan, because the Verona Area School District tends to be a popular draw to the west side of Fitchburg for folks. Crescent Crossing, also in the same vicinity, nearing completion. Quarry Vista, which is also to the west side of Fitchburg, over by Fitzrona and Lacey also. That's pretty much completed as well. Fahey Fields is just to the south of us here. That is, my clicker wants to not cooperate with me. That has about 250 single-family homes that are about to begin down in the Highfield Reserve. That's a Viridian subdivision. And then David Fahey, who is the original property owner, is working on approximately 225 multifamily apartments and townhomes as well in that particular area. So this is where the multifamily will be located. This is where all the 250 residential homes are. And then right here is St. Ambrose Academy. They have their school building is working its way through city processes right now, and they're hoping to begin construction on that school later next year. You can see a little bit more there. Terra Vesta, we talked about, that's the far east side of town, to the east of Highway MM. That's, as Sean was just mentioning, Phil Sveum's development. That's been going very well. I think he's moved into the third phase already of that particular development. They have, I don't see, the school is right here, the Oregon Elementary School that was built right there. Just for some bearings, this is Goodland Park Road right here. This is Highway MM. And then this is the Lacey Road where it came across 14 and come through here. This has all been built. They're working on this right now. And there's an apartment building that's scheduled for, that's under construction right now. That's called the Texas Wraparound. They build the parking
That's
garage in the middle, and then they build the apartments all around it with wood frame construction. So the city actually got a few calls, and I know the alders did as well, like what's the concrete structure that's being built there, because it literally had door cutouts all the way down for the stairwells and nothing else, and it looked like it was just a concrete box sitting there. And now if you go over there, they've already started on 2 of the sides with the wood frame construction going around it. So I think that's about 180 units, but it's a new concept for this area. I think it's the second one being built in Dane County. And then what's nice about it is if you live on the 4th floor, you have a parking stall on the 4th floor, and then you just walk from your apartment or from your parking spot inside the parking garage into the floor you go on. So it's kind of an interesting concept. They also have 2 mixed-use buildings that are under construction in Terra Vesta. I think they've got a total of about 4,000 square feet in each of the 2 buildings. So we're looking forward to getting some neighborhood retail opportunities there. And then Riversong plans to begin a project next year there, which has 128 senior apartments and 60 senior assisted living apartments as well. So there's still a lot happening at Terra Vesta. Inspiration Point is right off of East Sherrill Parkway, just down the road from here. They also have some duplex units, townhome units, and a CBRF planned. That's been approved by the city. Some townhomes, condominiums on Lacey Road. These are owner-occupied buildings.
More of those.
We do need more of these as well. I would agree with you. These are very popular as well, these duplex townhome units. And it's nice when we see some of these projects come through. So I know I got a little winded there. I talked quite a bit. I hope it conveys that there's a lot going on in City Hall, not just from the development perspective, but just other things between recruiting, retention, providing city operations, the Town of Madison attachment, election stuff. I mean, we could talk for days on end about that, about what's happening. So questions, comments, feedback that I can share with anybody? Go ahead.
So, you presented a lot, and a lot of it I couldn't identify where you are or were.
Sure.
So how would I find out now? If I wanted to go look and find out, what's being built on Sherrill Drive?
Yeah. So our plant commission is one way to stay connected to see what's being built. And that actually bring up a good point, is that perhaps the city should consider a map on its website that might be, you can click on particular areas and then it would pop up with what's on there. That might be something that I need to file away here on a Sunday afternoon and look to see if we can get that developed. But you're always welcome to contact City Hall. If you have a question about something, reach out to an alder and say, hey, I'm just kind of curious what this project is and what's happening with it. And we're happy to answer those questions. So, and if you look, basically right now most of our growth is concentrated off of Fish Hatchery and Nobel, over 14 and Lacey, kind of in a radius there, and then Seminole Highway and Lacey Road, and then North Fish Hatchery Road. That's pretty much where a lot of our growth is. And all of these, nearly probably 90+% of those projects I talked about are in one of those 4 areas. So, yeah. But I will take that thought and try to do something a little bit better so that folks are like, yeah.
It's like a bubble map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, instead of contacting an alder, because it's really not, it's just being nosy. I'm curious.
Yeah.
It'd be like, I wonder what they're building over there.
Well, good news is I have a development team meeting on Tuesday afternoon, so I can throw that out right at that meeting and say, yeah, exactly. We'll see how far I can get it up on their priority list, without a doubt. So, but no, it's a very good question. I'm glad you brought that up. So, yeah.
So with all the multi-family buildings that are proposed,
Yeah.
do you see a problem in traffic getting around in Fitchburg or from one area to the other because of so many more people riding? Yeah.
Well, it's certainly possible. And I think when you look at, how we reconstructed Hatchery Road, that was obviously designed to help take on a bit more density, without a doubt. And our uptown neighborhood that was designed with density in mind. I think what you are going to see is, yes, there will likely be some measure of traffic increases. Just anytime you add, more and more people into any area, that's what's likely to happen. And one of the things that's been interesting for me to learn is a lot of the things that we hear at City Hall is we'd like to have more retail options, or we'd like to have more restaurants or commercial options within the city of Fitchburg. And one of the things that drives those developments is people. They need to have enough people within a certain radius in order to bring those establishments to us. So it's a little bit of a catch-22, right? Sometimes the traffic can be a bit of an inconvenience and a bit of a headache, but at the same time, we're having to travel farther to see or get to some of the things that we want to do because we don't quite meet enough thresholds. So I'll be honest, I think yes, there will be some bit of traffic increase, but I don't think anything that's going to totally tax the system and cause gridlock. So, yeah.
Trying to cross Hatchery Road on work hours in the afternoon or in the morning. If you gotta get out your driveway, you go right because you can't go left.
Yeah, it can be a challenge to get left at certain times of the day, depending on where you're at, without a doubt. Yeah. Yep. Go ahead.
So agricultural versus residential and commercial has been an issue in Fitchburg since I was a little kid, because I grew up in Fitchburg. So one of the questions that occurs is, what's the projection or what's the plan for either retention of agricultural percentage, or is the vision that, and again, I'll be honest, people who didn't own land back in the day in Fitchburg, the tension was the property owners versus the people who didn't have land, and who prevails in the decision making. So when I see all the growth, and I totally understand there's housing shortages, but the question that in my head, and that my siblings who don't live in this area are asking is, what are the wetlands, the marsh areas? There's so much that we remember as not viable for construction.
Right.
What's the vision for balancing residential and retail growth versus the environmental factors?
Sure. Yeah, so you're right. Some areas are just not suitable for development to begin with. Those will be preserved because it wouldn't make sense for them to be developed either environmentally, economically, and there could be other ways that we can capture use for those spaces when you preserve them as just an open space that's available to be able to use, particularly as the city and the metropolitan area begins to grow. When you look at what our current land use map, future urban growth looks like, you can still see this white area is all currently not planned for development. That is our rural portion of Fitchburg, and it would take a considerable amount of time for that to even develop, if it does. I mean, we're looking to really, and that's a good question. That's a question that will be asked every time we do a comprehensive land use plan update, when we go out and we talk with the community and say, where should Fitchburg grow? Should it grow? What should be preserved? What should be developed? What does the community want to see for development? Do they
Make sense environmentally.
Yeah, and I guess where I'm coming from, and again, I'm not anti-growth, so I totally get that. But in the 15 years that I returned to Fitchburg as an adult, one of the themes that I see in almost every council race or mayor race is the balance between the developer's interest and the people who aren't developers. And if someone from outside were to look at this, you'd kind of go, the developers sure seem to be winning in this one. So I think that's the perspective that I'm trying to communicate.
Well, you also have to look at the developers are partnering with a property owner, right? who apparently has gotten to the point in their situation where, whatever the reason, they're looking to move on from farming. Maybe they don't have anyone else in their family who has an interest in taking over the farm operations. Nobody is willing to come in and buy that land for farming operations or general preservation, and that the developer may be the only one who's willing to come in and buy that particular land. So we certainly try to grow in a controlled manner. I mean, we don't grow outside the urban service area, for one. You might see a house here and there that a property owner is able to have approved through the city, through the process that it has. But by and large, we are really growing in the Highway 14 corridors where we anticipate the growth to be coming along. Again, trying to focus things on traffic corridors where it's more easy to get to and from where you want to go. Perhaps it may then also support more transit options, be it bus rapid transit, like we've talked about on Hatchery Road, or additional transit that will serve this general vicinity by having perhaps more dense growth confined to certain areas of the city. And then, of course, looking at this particular area over here, again, largely because there's notable demand in the Verona School District. And this is also, a lot of this will end up being reclaimed quarrying type land as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just a philosophical question.
Sure.
Too. You look at the loss of family farms, Wisconsin's losing X per day. To what extent are we feeding into that change of the population? So.
Right. Yeah. No, it's part of a good, healthy conversation to have, without a doubt. Yeah.
Point, the city does have an Ag and Rural Affairs Committee, which is so unique to the city, and can't resist with the two wonderful people sitting here, but Bill and Carol's son, Ed, has been on the planning commission for 30-some years? He literally is the guy that has his foot on the brake, because he's always good about saying we got to protect how we grow. So that conversation about urban growth versus not, that map has really kind of been like sacrosanct of where we go. If somebody comes in as a developer and says they want to develop something willy-nilly, as Randy knows, we got to immediately send her that map.
Right. As you know, I sit on both those committees.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the time I've been with the city. Granted, I was with the police department, but there have been proposals to develop in this area that the city declined. There's been proposals to develop this area of the city that the city's declined. So the city does try to take a reasonable approach to making sure that development that is proposed makes sense, that it's within the goals that have been identified in the land use plans, and does honor and preserve our agricultural history.
And I think it's important to note, and Chad has done that, and Sean as well, that there are control measures in place. Because I've been approached by a number of landowners that would like to develop, and they're just not allowed to.
They all do.
Sure. So it isn't just the large developers that come in and want to develop. There are landowners that would like to let go as well.
I
So
totally understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one thing I've learned in this my time in this role that I'm really glad to see is that even with a good project that comes forward, city staff just doesn't rubber stamp that. They try to enhance the quality of that project, whether it's the amenities within the project or whether it's the design and the materials used within that project. And there's a lot of things that get presented to city staff that don't even make it to alders or make it to a plan commission application because they just know it's not gonna make it through. So we definitely try to be good stewards of what we have going on.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, Chad, your presentation is beautifully done, but I think to Eileen's question, maybe that balance of also just what you said, here's our outside our urban service area, which is part of Fitchburg, which is an important part of our vision of how Fitchburg is, what it means to us. And so to maybe have that as part of the presentation also, or just always having that as part of the goals, visions of what Fitchburg will be like, because it has that totality to it. And while all this development is going on, lots of things, I mean, it's just dramatic to see all of this. To also maybe the more silent part of Fitchburg to be also noted.
Sure.
and recognized.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair point. Yep. Go ahead.
I think all this growth is amazing, but it doesn't seem like our police department, fire department are getting enough staff to cover all these new residential areas. I mean, it sounds like you're way understaffed for all the growth that there is.
Yeah, and we talked about that earlier on in the presentation, where we have made investments in public safety. And as I mentioned, I was with the police department for just over 23 years before moving into this role. And we went from about 34 sworn members when I started in 1999 to about 52, I think it was, when I left the police department last year. So there's been slow and steady incremental growth, but one of the things that the approach has always been is the city just doesn't typically have enough resources to absent these last 2 years with these TID closures, to do large numbers of hiring. Most of the time it's 1, maybe 2, in a very good year, 3 positions would be added throughout the entire city for the bulk of the years that I've been with the city. This is the first time that I can recall where we've had back-to-back years where we've been able to add a notable number of positions. And I think what you see from that is that, yes, some departments are farther behind than all, but I think all are behind. And where the mayor's commitment has been is not only to public safety, where the majority of the positions have gone, but also to all of the other departments. An easy example that I can use is in the mayor's proposed budget for next year is an accountant position. And if my recollection is correct in talking with our finance director, we haven't added but 1 part-time position in our finance department since 1995. So that's just one microcosm of the entire city, where a lot of these departments where they may have 4, 5, 6 people, they haven't gotten a staff person added to them for in some cases, decades, despite all of what you've seen happening with the city and all of the changes in how we do our operations. And does an accountant position mean there's 1 less police officer or firefighter? Yeah, it does. That's the reality of it. But that's the issues that we're dealing with when we talk about the budgetary constraints. I think if the mayor and others had their druthers, so to speak, again, keeping taxes in mind and what the impact would be, is you would see even more positions being added in those particular budgets if the levy limits allowed us to do so, and we could still keep taxes at reasonable increases.
But if it involves new construction, there must be a lot more money coming in. So, I mean.
And you're seeing where it's going. It's going to all of those different departments in order to address all of the staffing needs. And I think what you're going to see, and many communities are doing this, is those referendum to add public safety in particular. Where you're seeing 5 or 6 police officers, 5 or 6 firefighters in these referendums, EMS crews, and all of these things. So I think that you're likely to see something, at least being debated at the council level, within the next 2 years.
I vote for it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Well, I know we have just one more question.
As a historical society, I just wondered if you had seen anything that the city or the town of Madison had for historical records. Have you seen anything that could be switched to the people here?
I have not, but that's a very good question, and I'm going to take that one back as well and see if anybody else has. I know we've had staff that have done some tours at the town hall to see what they have there, and I can certainly pose that question to see if anybody saw anything. Yeah, absolutely. And also we could reach out to the current town administrator and see if they can point us in the right direction on anything they may have, and see if we can bring that into the Fitchburg Historical Society. So no, absolutely great question.
You're joining a great group.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I just had the tour again of the office back there. I mean, we're just so fortunate to have a group of dedicated volunteers who are willing to maintain the history of Fitchburg. I mean, because it's unique. I mean, I've been around the state through the policing profession, and there aren't many 35 square mile cities with all the things that we have going on between the rural, the suburban, and the urban component. And it's one of the things that's attracted me to Fitchburg, and it's quite honestly, it's kept me here. It's what we have going here, so it's a great place to be.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.